But I have, and I have those. And so this particular incident, so a couple of children were starting a fire on a canal. Children. And then the chief says, and I can forward this to you, I'll happily do it. I think James Madison posted them on there. But basically he says, oh, look at these little children out here starting a fire. This is what I got going for my house. And the chief said, oh, you're like that little snitch that calls the police and sits in the shadows and watches what happens. And then the chief says, you should just buy a pellet rifle and pop them one by one. And then the commander, because it's think tank mentality, a commander says, L, and I laughed my ass off, was about to type the same thing. And literally, they posted pictures of the children, and that's what he says, buy a pellet rifle and pop them one by one. And I'm thinking, how does a chief of police, and I'm in the text message, right? I don't respond. You can see my little blue bubbles. But how does a chief survive that? Right? How does he survive that? And then he wants to go to the schools on the first day and hold these signs welcoming these children to the schools. And I post in the social media. I put the text message out there. Behind closed doors, you want to pop children one by one with a pellet rifle, but when the cameras are around, you want to hold signs welcoming children.
Back to school, right?
Yeah, and I'm thinking, I don't get it. But again,
and nobody in the city of Palm Bay, as far as councilwomen, councilmen, the mayor, no one has, you're not just some, random police officer that's saying these things. You were in the group chats. You're seeing everything that's happening. You have evidence of what you're saying. No one has thought to take it up and say, hey, come meet with me. I want to talk to you. I want to learn more about what it is you have to say.
Interesting enough, so finally, after 13 months of this, 4 city managers, city manager Morton is hired. He stands at the podium on a Saturday. I take my Saturday and I go in there. And he talks about accountability. Talks about how that there will be times when he'll tell his bosses no. And at the time, our city council was trying to bring in a former city manager that was actually his tenure included an FBI investigation where people got arrested, indicted, and so they were trying to bring him back. And I fought against that, and I stood up for Mr. Morton because of his accountability speech. So finally, after 13 months, he finally reaches out to me. He said, hey, I'm a little concerned that you did a public records request for the FOP endorsement of the new chief and his discipline at the same time, because the FOP president is getting disciplined ironically the same time he now gives this endorsement after previously telling me he wanted an outside chief. And so he sits down with me. He wants to meet me at Dunkin' Donuts. He tells me he has 45 minutes. He's late. He barely even acknowledged my existence. There's a police officer parked outside, and then the officer walks inside. And so we meet, and I hand him an entire thumb drive. It's probably got 40 different things. It has a text message about wanting to shoot children. It's got the text message of the chief calling officers that are on medical leave yahoos, berating officers in text messages. Talks about attacking his neighbors, his disabled neighbors. All this stuff. I have letters where they were telling people in June while I was still employed that I was no longer with the police department. I had the text messages from the pictures of him sending a SWAT team over to my house to return 4 pieces of property. Sends 4 cars and 5 officers, and they don't say a word to me. May 30th. I've been away from the police department for 30 days, and they don't even say a word to me. And
they were dropping off property?
Yeah, because I couldn't go get my own property from my office.
And there were how many to drop off property? 5
officers, 4 cars for 4 pieces of property. A refrigerator, a microwave, and 2 coin racks, because I collect challenge coins. But they never say a word to me. They body cam the entire thing, which then I tried to get a public records request. They tried to deny it ever happened. But because I know the system, I knew how to go get it. But yeah, so I met with the city manager. I gave him all this stuff. I gave him names to call. I find out he doesn't call anybody. So July, or just a couple council meetings ago, when the chief rebukes me and denounces me and all this kind of big words and puts up this great theatrics, you can watch it. The deputy or the city manager says, yeah, I've done investigations, and nothing I find is credible. I go to every council meeting. I put the text messages on the screen at council. I do presentations. I put them up on the screen so that no council person can deny that they happened, but yet not credible. All the emails that I provide him, all the pictures, the text messages of him calling.
That would be easy to confirm. That would be easy to confirm. Is go to IT and pull the metadata from the emails from the from all the text messages, but they don't want to confirm it. That's what it sounds like to me. They don't want to confirm anything. They want to try and ostracize you and paint you as disgruntled and everything else to hide from what you're trying to expose there.
Yeah, police department, they use a delay tactic, right?
I've been part of that tactic a lot.
You know what? We'll just pretend like it didn't happen. They'll go away, and most of the times that happens. The chief has said it multiple times. Yeah, you've been doing this for 15 months. Yep, I haven't went away because I've made a promise to you. When I try to file my complaints and you try to discipline me for that. He never did. I pulled my discipline records. I have one discipline from 2009. People are like, oh, he must have been on the verge of getting terminated or insubordinate. Nope. I have one discipline, or not even discipline. I have one complaint from 2009 from a gentleman when I was in crime suppression who said I was harassing him. You're a burglar. I was harassing you. You're a burglar.
Right.
So I was. So I have no other discipline. But I told him because he berated me. He screamed at me. Told me Satan was in my head. I couldn't do this job anymore. All because I went to him and said, hey, I'm struggling mentally. And I told him, you're not going to do to me what you've done to everybody else. You berated people and forced them to resign or just quit. I'm not walking away, guy. I'm not doing it, man. I'm a deputy chief. I've been a Marine. I've been in law enforcement. I've dealt with people like you in my entire career, man. I've been loyal to you, even to a fault. I've said I was a part of the problem. Lance Fisher, Deputy Chief Fisher of Palm Beach Police Department, was a part of the problem. I've not denied that. You'll see comments, oh, now you came forward. No, I came forward as deputy chief. But you're right. I had to make that conscious decision. I was a part of the problem. I was a part of decisions that failed our community and failed our police department. And I'm doing everything I can now to make sure that these things don't happen again. And the mere fact that Chief Ajello is set to retire in April of 2026, it's been kind of insinuating that was kind of a plea agreement because of everything that's been brought up. But he was able to choose his next chief, which is Chief Spears, the guy that was below me. Our city manager won't even go to an outside chief with everything that he knows that's going on. Will not even do a national, with 9 months to go, will not even do a nationwide search to find a chief that can change the culture, like Kissimmee did. If you follow the Kissimmee story, right? Same thing, excessive use of force cases, covered up, cone of silence, all this stuff. They went to an outside chief. What did that outside chief do? He came in, he investigated all these complaints. So he starts disciplining, terminating, he starts looking at all these officers, and that's what Palm Bay cannot afford. They cannot afford an outside chief to come in and prove the very things that I've been saying. Because remember, I was a part of that, so I have the facts, and all they can do is ignore me. That's all, and hope I go away. And you'll see our city council. They've went from we're not gonna live stream public comments anymore. And so when I got berated on July 3rd for 12 minutes because I exposed Chief Ajello threatening Melbourne police officers and interfering with an investigation. It's in the official police report. It was so bad that the lieutenants don't write reports, wrote a supplement talking about Chief Ajello's demeanor to his very officers. And so when I expose that, I get berated for 12 minutes. And then I do a public records request for those 12 minutes. There's no public records because it's not recorded, it's not live streamed. So they literally changed. They silenced 150,000 citizens to silence me. And now you'll see that on the agenda this Thursday, Deputy Mayor Jaffe, the one that silences the public, now has on the agenda that if you're not a resident of Palm Bay, you can't come to council and speak under public comments. And I believe that's because of you, because of what you did and you exposed it. Melbourne,
right?
And so I think
they just want to be going over there talking,
or somebody like you, right? They don't want an outsider to come in and expose their city,
right?
And
I don't know if that's lawful to keep out. I've been speaking at public meetings across the country, and I've never seen a city council put a restriction on only residents of the county or the city can speak during public comment. I've never seen that before, so that's interesting. You said there was a meeting this Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really wish. I wish I didn't have a flight tomorrow because there is nothing. After talking to you, there is nothing that I want to do. I'm going to see if I can change my flight. But there's nothing more that I would love to show up to that meeting and speak directly to the mayor and the city council and to have your back and this video will do that, right? This video will also do that because, the people who watch my videos, who watch my content, who follow what I do, we're very united. They make phone calls, they write letters, they send letters out. they comment on Facebook posts. They will try and bring awareness as much as possible to what's going on here and try and get accountability, and that's what they hate. The number one reason I told you I've worked with law enforcement, law enforcement agencies, done ride-alongs, trainings, district attorneys' offices, the trainings, but most departments don't like me because I am the news that they can't control. Because from my experience, and you can talk about this as a former deputy chief, the local news, the mainstream media local news, they kind of bend the knee to the police department because from what I've seen is so that way they can get the next burglary, they can get the next story that's coming out, they get the next tip on, hey, this accident happened, or hey, this happened, so they don't really cover too much. Have you reached out to any mainstream media? What's your experience inside and then now that you're on the out?
I have reached to media for, again, almost 12 months for a year.
Wow.
I've had personal conversations, and almost nothing. Now, I'll be honest, so the last council meeting, I knew it was going to be a big one, because if you haven't followed Councilman Langevin, who is on social media a lot, and he makes very pointed comments about demographics, religion, stuff like that. Well, he made some comments about the Indian community, and they came out in numbers. I mean, there were hundreds of people. So Councilman Langevin has said things about every race, every religion, but now all of a sudden this council got concerned because it's the Indian Republican community that donates their finances, that fill their coffers, right? So I knew it was going to be. I knew it was going to be big. I knew there was going to be media there, and I said, because I wasn't planning on going to council anymore. Because to me, like you said, I'm not speaking to council anymore. I'm speaking to the 30 people that actually pay attention. And so for me, I want to start up thin blue light audits and go a different route and find that bigger audience. Because I was just curious, as a deputy chief, was my story presentable? Would I resonate with anybody? So out of curiosity, right? And so I went to that council meeting knowing that there'd be media there, and I gave 2 speeches. And the second I sat down with the first one, I talked about Chief Agello and all the things that I've been talking about. The second I sat down, media started asking for my information, and then they did do a couple news articles. And then I went up and like you, I went to Mascot. I did my 2.5-hour drive at the beginning of October, and I went up and I spoke to their council and their mayor and their city staff, because they hired Officer Rollins from Columbia, South Carolina, where I have paperwork that says he was terminated for 4 excessive use of force cases. And he was terminated for 8 uses of force in a 5-month period, where other officers averaged 1 a year. And
I was gonna say 1 month.
yeah, 1 a year. So his numbers were exponentially higher. And the same things that we saw here in Palm Bay, attacking handcuffed prisoners, pushing them down, grabbing the throat, which is the same thing that I saw in one of his traffic stops here in Palm Bay that I highlighted. So I went to Mascot and to call that chief out, Chief Peterson. Why did you hire this guy? Did you even do a Google search? Because you can Google Officer Sean Rollins, Google search him, and you see what you see. And then when I saw what he did to one of our citizens, same thing, smashes her window, does a vehicle pursuit to her house over a flock camera hit that said the owner of the vehicle's license was suspended. The owner's not even in the vehicle. Her license is valid. They hold her on scene for 20 minutes and she complies, right? Because we talk about comply with law enforcement, and that's what everybody says. She should have just complied. She complied with an unlawful traffic stop for 20 minutes, was on the phone with 911, and a supervisor was on the way. And yet Rollins still smashes her window out, chases her to her house, kicks in her front door, drags her out of the house while she's handcuffed, chokes her, and strikes her in the face. And the Palm Bay Police Department's reports say this never happened. The body camera footage that I've watched for over 12 hours that I've produced says this happened. And so I traveled to Mascot to call that chief out. Why did you hire him? And because you hired him, I failed my job as a deputy chief, and now my community that I represent is being terrorized.
So where does he work now?
Palm Bay Police Department.
He works at the Palm Bay Police Department?
Palm Bay Police Department.
Before he worked?
Mascot, Florida. And before that, he worked for Columbia, South Carolina.
So he's one of the he's one of the traveling law enforcement officers that one traveling tyrants who, again, I've been in this kind of space investigating law enforcement and calling out this sort of corruption and seeing it firsthand myself across the country. And what I've noticed is that law enforcement officers, they just go to a different department. if like we talked about the lack of accountability, but even if there is some modicum of accountability, they just move to the next county, the next state, the next city. They just go to a different department and everything's okay, everything's forgotten, like it never happened because he resigned. All the news will tell you is he resigned.
Yeah.
He resigned, and then you're like, oh, good. That he's no longer a law enforcement officer. That's a good thing. But what the news doesn't tell you is, yeah, he resigned, but now he's working for the Palm Bay City Police Department.
Yeah, 100%. And and that's what's crazy on this one because so I did a public records request about a month ago, and from the Palm Bay Police Department and South Carolina Police Department, and I asked for all the correspondence between Palm Bay and Columbia, South Carolina during the hiring process because I wanted that letter of termination. I got nothing back, not even acknowledgement, and so this story gets put out there that this officer is terrorizing his third community now, and so one of the reporters, I think it was Channel 6. Goes out and he does a story on his failure to disclose all these cases while he was hired by the Palm Bay Police Department. And so then the Palm Bay comes out and they do a statement. This will be our one and only statement. And they produce this letter that says, Columbia, South Carolina accepts your letter of resignation effective February 17th, I think this says. The letter's not dated. So my guess is, because I've been in this job a long time, that he said, I'm going to sue you because you terminated me. And they're like, okay, we'll let you resign, but you're not coming back here to work. And so that's what the Palm Bay Police Department produces, this letter that says they accepted his resignation. Even though I have 7 pages from South Carolina Criminal Justice Training Academy showing his training history that talks about how he was terminated, and it's dated February 25th, that he was terminated from South Carolina Police Department on February 17th of 2021 for 4 cases of excessive force, including pushing down a handcuffed prisoner, grabbing somebody's throat, all the things that we saw in this video in Palm Bay. So instead of acknowledging, okay, there is documentation that he was terminated, his history doesn't change. Whether he resigned, terminated, separated,
Right.
It doesn't
I was going to
matter.
make that point.
His history does not change.
Right.
The Google search does not change. And instead of saying, we made a mistake because Chief of Jail's ego is so big to say, we hired this guy twice, hired him twice because he left our agency and then came back. Failed to do a Google search. His applications are completely different from 2023 when we hired him in 2025. 2023, he made a statement, I got the normal complaints that all officers do for doing their job. And in 2025, he said, I have no complaints. So, but he's a probationary employee, which means you can literally be like, Lance, we no longer need your services. That's it. You don't have to give him a reason. No reason at all. You don't have to admit fault. You don't have to admit guilt. You don't have to say we screwed up. You don't have to. All you have to do is say, to protect your community, all Chief of Jail has to do is say, Officer Rollins, your services are no longer needed. But he will not do that. He doubled up. He produces this one letter that says, we accept your resignation. Doesn't produce the other documents that say he was terminated. Doesn't produce his history. Doesn't produce his history at Mascot because he's being sued by Councilman Hughes and her husband, who's a councilwoman of Mascot where he worked. She is now suing him for police brutality for almost an identical incident that I described that happened to Miss Hatcher in Palm Bay, where this loving husband sees his wife getting pulled over at night. They're both in law enforcement. They're both work for the prisons. And he pulls in front of the traffic stop, far enough away that he's not impeding the traffic stop. She tells Officer Rollins, that's my husband, he's just checking on me, we follow each other to work. He's like, okay, well, I'll just tell him. And he goes up there and says, hey, the guy's like, yep, I'm just waiting on my wife. As soon as this goes, he's like, yeah, you can't stay here. And then the guy's like, why not? And he's like, why do you have an attitude? Now you need to leave, I'm giving you a lawful order. And within a minute and a half is smashing this dude's window, tasing him, and dragging him out of the car. All because he pulled over to the side of the road like any husband should do and make sure his wife is okay. It's at night, right? And he loses his job. His FDLE certification is pending. He's immediately terminated from the Department of Corrections. And so now there's this lawsuit from that now Mascot is being sued by their own councilwoman because of Officer Rollins' actions. And the city of Palm Bay is willing to roll the dice for their taxpayers because we talked about this in the beginning. It's the taxpayers that pay. So now every time Officer Rollins goes on a call for service, we're rolling the dice. Chief of Jail is rolling the dice that this guy will not violate anybody else's civil rights, will not use excessive force on any other prisoner. And not only that, you're placing every other police officer, every time he goes on a call with these officers, you're placing them in jeopardy. Because when they fail to expose this, or, because we have a duty to intervene policy.
Right.
After George Floyd incident, almost every police department started either revised or initiated a duty to intervene policy, placing every officer that goes on calls with Officer Rollins, their job and their civil liberties in jeopardy. And it's just unfortunate that Chief Ajello won't simply say to him, well, yeah, we're not gonna take the risk, man. We don't need your services any longer. They're gonna retain him, and he will end up costing the city of Palm Bay money. That's just unfortunate.
And he's probably the chief. I imagine is just his ego, right? It's just he hired him, and he's like, I'm going to see this through, and I don't care what anybody else says. And maybe that's something you have the body camera footage and all of that for these incidents. Mm-hmm. That's good. Lance has started a YouTube channel. He's trying to get his story out there more. That's why I invited him here on my channel, because I'm a big proponent of people that worked inside of government to come out and blow the whistle and say what's really going on. I've never worked inside of a police department. I've never, been a part of this command staff meeting where I'm hearing all these things. But Lance has. He's former deputy chief, and I really support your work and what you're doing. I would suggest to everybody to go subscribe to Thin Blue Line Audits.
It's supposed to be Thin Blue Lie. Right now it's Thin Blue Line, but yes.
Thin Blue Line right now audit, yeah. But it's changing to Thin Blue Lie. I like that one.
Yeah. Well,
I like Thin Blue Lie.
So again, I'm new at this, right? So my son sits down with me. He's like, "Oh, Dad, you misspelled line," and next thing you know, I can't change it. So, but that's where I'm at. But yeah, I appreciate it. I think I was at 9 views.
Yeah.
Then now when I went to Mascot and spoke, for some reason that's caught on pretty good. So I'm trying to get there, but like I said, I was curious if my story resonated as a deputy chief, because I don't find a lot of stories where people of my rank turn against their brothers in blue, right? Will come out and speak the truth, because that's what I do. And
you did turn against the Thin Blue Line.
Mm-hmm.
You did.
Absolutely.
I'm sure the majority of your department think of you as a traitor.
100%, absolutely, probably 90%. You have that. You'll have that 10% that secretly back me. They watch
secretly.
They watch my channels, because I treated people fair. And it's funny because now it's like, oh, he was the worst leader ever. Really? Because you guys came to my office every single day. Every day I sat there till 7 o'clock at night. Even when my wife was texting me, "You need to come home." We discussed leadership. We discussed all kinds of issues. But yeah, so once you turn against the brotherhood, you turn against the family, the Thin Blue Line, right? And those are all ideologies that chiefs input in your head, right? When you get sworn in, when you swear to the oath, the first thing you talk about, welcome to the family, right? And that's that mentality, because you don't speak out against your family, you don't speak outside of your home.
It's like a gang,
right? Yeah,
it's like a gang, because that's what gangs tell each other, right?
Absolutely.
Gangs say they're bros, they're brothers,
yeah, right.
And you don't go against your brother.
No.
And I wouldn't go against my blood brother. I wouldn't. I mean, but I also wouldn't make anybody else that's not my blood brother. Like I would stand by my brother to the end. But I would, if I'm a law enforcement officer, that's why I wouldn't treat them as my brothers, because there's an obligation to be able to hold them accountable when they engage in misconduct. You took an oath not to uphold, your Thin Blue Line. You took an oath to uphold the United States Constitution, to protect and defend the people of our country from enemies, foreign and domestic. Like, you have to uphold our rights, but yet you're protecting another badge, because that's your family, that's your brotherhood.
And unfortunately, when you have a chief like Chief Ajello, who he said this, "I will do anything for family, blue and blood." Anything is such a strong word, right? That means you'll allow false police reports. I have false police reports. I have a report that was a use of force case where the corporal gets on scene and lets the guy go from the hospital. I talked about the Segway, a red light on a Segway. He hit this guy because it's cold outside, puts his hands on the hood to warm his hands up. When the officer walks back up, he turns to talk to him, and he's like, "Put your hands back on the hood." He's like, "Dude, I wasn't told to. I was literally keep my hands warm." Next thing you know, this guy's on the ground getting pummeled. So the corporal gets to the hospital and says, "Hey, man, this was a bad arrest and a bad use of force. You're free to go." He puts that in an official supplement. He says, "This was a bad arrest. a bad use of force. The lieutenant comes along, in the use of force, the use of force is in compliance. And then everything is in compliance. But then what's even crazier is there's a body camera, it's about a minute body camera footage, where the officer that made the arrest calls this gentleman up after he's released him and says, hey, because they lost this guy's wallet and his knife, they put him on the police car and they drive away, and which happens all the time. And so he loses his knife. And he calls him and says, hey man, I found your knife. He's like, oh, I found my knife. He's like, I didn't find your knife, but I want to give you my knife, a personal knife, so we can be friends. And the guy's like, no man, you just beat me up. The last thing I want to do is come get a knife from you. So this guy writes in his police report that this victim didn't want his knife back and submitted a knife into evidence. Literally, when he says on body camera, I lost your knife. But then he writes in the police report, I found your knife, that he didn't want the knife, and I submitted it evidence. I've put that out there, and nobody cares. Nobody cares. I mean, the case with Officer Rollins, I'm talking about, he kicks in this lady's door. He writes in the report, she tried to slam the door in my face. I stopped the video. He's 10 to 15 feet away from the door. She's closed it and locked it. And when he kicks that door in, the wood splinters. It splinters from the lock area, but yet he puts in his police report, she tried to slam the door in my face and I stuck my foot out to block it, yet the door is pulverized, right? And then I talk about the use of force, where Commander Rubnicki and IA talk about IA, Sergeant Pendar signs off on the report basically saying that the body camera footage shows that her complaints of being struck in the face and the neck are unfounded, that the body camera footage does not support her allegations. Yet she goes to the hospital, she makes the allegations on scene. Every time I sat down with her, she made the same allegations. I talked to the neighbors who said, I was ready to fight the cops because that guy was so out of control. He kept escalating, claps in her face, literally gets in her face, good job, good job. And then he's mad, right? She should have complied. We have an officer who's trained for these kind of encounters. They're trained for these type of responses. They're trained for these high stress situations. Civilians are not. Citizens are not trained for any of that. They're not trained to have their windows smashed in, chased to their house, and their doors kicked in. They're not trained for that. But the officers are. But then he sits there and he claps and he mimics her. It's just, it's disturbing.
Well, Lance, I really appreciate it. You speaking out just in general. I appreciate you coming on the channel. And I hope that everybody watching goes subscribes to your channel and goes follows your work, because what you're doing is important. And I'm glad to have, connected with you because I look forward to working with you again in the future. We could share information. I'm sure the police chief of Palm Bay is not going to like this sort of alliance between us right here. I can imagine, because if you're as bad as he says, which I believe Lance here, police chief Agillo?
Yep.
Agillo. Maybe you need a billboard truck in your area. Maybe, I get very creative. So you're not going to silence Lance. You're not going to silence me. You're not going to silence we the people. Lance, I look forward to your future work. Thank you so much.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your audience for even taking the time to listen to me today. And I was actually born in Bayshore, so.
Okay.
So there you go. A whistleblower telling the truth of what he's been through and verifying what I've been spilling out for a long time. From my experience, this is going on in almost every town. Every town. I've been to council meetings here where I live. It's exactly that way. I've been to the sheriff's office. I've been to the chief office and got ran off just because I was asking about how many children were missing since they've been keeping track. The sheriff's office, I asked for a FOIA, and I was told that they don't have any reports of or any complaints from anybody. And then the worst thing of it is the sheriff is the one that does the FOIAs, so that's not gonna work. There's too much control there. And I've been to the media in this town, and it's a joke. So everything these guys are talking about is exactly the facts. And that's why I wanted you to see this. It cannot be disputed. The guy has been an assistant deputy chief, and he got reprimanded for trying to be a good cop. Just like the video I have up, you can check it out with Jack Lemmon. He was also 25 years in the police force and was just ridiculed and fired from every department once he started following the Constitution. And it's a really good video. So hey, you guys subscribe. Love you guys and have a great day.